What's your process for doing just that, melding your professional experience with the academic model?
Well, I'm still finding it out, but I'm a lot more confident now than I was when I first contemplated how the whole drive behind doing this doctorate was to try and capture 35 plus years of activity, not only in policing in the UK, but around the world in different and sometimes extreme environments, to try and capture the lessons of that and put it into some sort of functional order. So that was the driver behind it. And the first, of course, I describe it as my journey in academia. I'm not a natural academic, so I describe my journey as sort of like walking the plank with a blindfold. Every step you take is a firm one until you get to the end and you fall in. And so that, I'm not a natural academic in that sense. So my approach was to say, okay, first of all, ask my academic supervisors, how can I use this? And I didn't really get clarity on that. But what I have done is, in acknowledging that almost every sentence I utter on paper has to have some sort of academic source or reinforcement behind it, what I've done is to go back over my journals that I kept when I was doing advising in Iraq or in Kenya or in other places, and look for information that I knew that I'd written down, which was basically observations on what a particular experience I'd had, and to use that as a crude form of field notes. And so the other element of the experience or the use of experience is to have written down or to write down notes of particular circumstances, which then become my formal record for which I can then refer to. They don't have the same value as the sort of published and peer-reviewed academic work, but nevertheless, it gives a sort of context and a certain amount of fibre and colour to the story I'm trying to tell. And on the subject of stories, I've found that it was actually quite useful to do a course offered by the university on storytelling, so that my 100,000 words or whatever it's going to be isn't some dusty, dry thing, but it's something that grabs somebody's interest.
And I understand that you're working now with a mentor who herself is a professor in research and development and PhD herself, but she's coaching you and a few others through the academic side of the research process. Is that right? What's that been like?
Well, it's early days yet, but I trained as a coach myself, so I know the value of it to other people. And you know it as well. Sometimes having that objective view from somebody who has an interest in you achieving but doesn't want to do it for you, that can actually help sharpen your own focus. And that's something that she's certainly helped me to do. And just simple things that I just don't know, I can seek her advice on in terms of her being an experienced academic. She also directs research or development. So it's all part of what her professional role is in any case. So it's not the sort of thing, as many of my colleagues say now, it's not the sort of thing you can raise with your academic supervisor. You just need somebody who has the competence but isn't directly responsible for putting you through the whole process, who you can bounce ideas off and get some thoughts on. So it feels right, and it's certainly helping to motivate me and focus on the sorts of things I should be doing, and as importantly, the things I shouldn't be doing. She has a very interesting expression about, your thesis has to be just good enough. It doesn't have to be brilliant. you can save that for your postdoctoral work or your article writing or whatever. But the doctorate is a process that you've got to go through, and the rules are set by the university. So follow those rules, and you should be able to work your way through it.
Fantastic. Well, and I know you're not a person that generally likes to ask for help, so it's good you've done so. Now, is this mentor the one that runs the class that you mentioned, Shut Up and Write?
Yeah, basically. There's in lots of walks of life, I'm sure, and certainly academia is one of them. There's an awful lot of talking goes on, lots of prevarication, lots of I'll just make myself a cup of tea, or I'll just answer this email, anything but to actually crack on with writing. And so that's what they sort of euphemistically call these sessions, which is basically just shut up and write.
Well, that's good, because often, I mean, you're used to writing reports for your professional work. As I mentioned, you've done the conflict management handbook. You've done everything in a professional situation, which, deals with targets and daily demands and so on, which is quite a different animal than academic writing. So it's good you've got that help. Now, you did mention that having this mentor or coach is helping with motivation and focus and discipline, probably. How are you dealing with the distractions of daily life? Tell us what that's like. What are some of your distractions and how you're handling them to keep motivated and gaining momentum in the process?
Yeah, well, I suppose the biggest, it's a welcome distraction, but it's the biggest distraction. I'm currently staying at my mother's house and shielding her, as we call it in the UK, from the pandemic virus. I'm the gatekeeper, and also because she's just celebrated her 93rd birthday, there's a few things that she forgets to do these days. So that's the biggest distraction. As soon as I hear her moving around, then that's it. I can't focus on my writing because I don't know what's going to happen next. So I find that because she tends to sleep in the mornings, I get up early. I do a couple of hours work first thing when I know I'm going to be free from any disruption. So sort of deep thinking stuff I can try and do then, and then once I'm doing the sort of the various chores and things like that need to be done later on in the day, I can do bits and pieces that don't require such deep application.
And are there any tools you've discovered that are particularly helpful for learners in later life that you'd recommend?
I think one of the most important things is actually to know how you learn. That, for me, still to this day, and in fact, I said to one of the expressions we use in coaching is you can only coach into a request. So it's pointless trying to coach somebody who doesn't want to be coached. And so what that means for me is I've actually said to my writing coach, don't give me lots of lists and stuff like that. It will completely just, I will blur over it. So pay attention to my learning style. Here it is. I'll describe it for you. And then adjust your coaching accordingly. And she's very much up for that. So first thing I would say is know your learning style. What stimulates you? Are you a visual person? Are you an auditory person? Are you a list person? Do you need to be in complete silence, or can you have music on? I used to find going to my local public library with all the noises that go on in those places these days was very much the same as when I was learning to be a cop way back. And I used to go to the laundrette because the noise of the machines and the general buzz in a laundrette enabled me just to shut out anything else that was distracting and concentrate on my work. So know your learning style, first of all, and then capitalize on it once you've actually decided what it is. If it's a visual thing, get loads of colors and pictures and stuff that's going to stimulate you. If you need to be organized with lots of light as opposed to being in a dark room, put yourself in a position where you can actually do your work. And it is very much like going to work. I've hijacked my mum's dining room, and that now is my study, and nobody else goes in there, and I can leave my work. And when I've finished my work, I walk away from it, do some cooking or whatever else I've got to do, then I can go back to it. So having the right workplace for you all sort of contribute towards getting the confidence to be able to do this learning. And I'm not suggesting that everybody sort of suddenly does a doctorate, but there are lots of things that we can learn to do by having our learning styles identified, and then having a bit of a loose plan. What is it we want to achieve? What does it look like at the end? And then work backwards from that. I often use the example of, if you are an Olympic gold medalist, what had to happen before you could stand on a rostrum with number one, a gold medal around your neck, your national anthem playing, and a bunch of flowers in your hand? Well, you had to win the race. Mm-hmm. What did you have to do before that? I had to win the heats, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Work your way backwards from that ideal situation, that end result.
Exactly. A bit of reverse engineering, and ultimately it's who you become in the process to step up to what's next for you. So thank you so much for stepping up today and sharing with us on our show. And how can people reach you? Do you have an email or a website you want to send people to if anyone has questions or wants to have you come speak?
Sure. DouglasBrandSpeaking.com is my commercial address. Otherwise, if anybody wants to drop me an email, dbrand and the number 2@hotmail.com is an alternative email address.
Okay, awesome. So Douglas Brand Speaking and dbrand2@hotmail.com. Thank you so much for sharing with us today about later life learning and your continuing adventures. And thanks to our listeners as well. We thank you for tuning in to Living Legacy Leadership. And do check out the archives at sobradionetwork.com and what's going on maybe at gamechangerthinking.com as well, which is my website. So thanks so much. And thanks, Douglas Brand. And do remember, the life you live is the legacy you leave. Bye-bye now.